Welcome to the USU Career Studio podcast that helps you navigate your career path. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to tell your friends and family all about it. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere else you listen to get access to our newest content.
Thanks for joining us for our Friday face-to-face episode. I'm Marissa Armitstead, your host, and I am so excited to welcome alum and executive assistant to the CMO of Pluralsight, Chris Glaittli, to the show. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, how's it going?
Chris, we're so excited to have you on the show today. And obviously you're not happy to be here either, I think.
I think, like I said earlier, I love Utah State so much. So any chance I get to like engage with it as a graduate, I happily will do. So I am super, super happy to be here. Like I love Utah State. It gets you excited just even like thinking that we're going to be talking about it. So I am very happy to be here.
Yay. Well, today we're talking all about Chaz and how that helped you get to where you are today. So I'd actually love to start our conversation. Give us kind of the rundown of, your educational experience, but maybe also a little bit about your career path. How did you end up at Pluralsight?
Yeah, so I went to Utah State, started Utah State in 2012. Which is really crazy to think about how long ago that feels, even though I can recall some stuff so easily. But and originally I'd gone up there and declared my major for law and constitutional studies, and eventually later on moved into journalism and public relations, and then also kind of kept political science as a degree as well. But that was kind of my pathway, but always remained within CHAS, always within the College of Humanities, because I knew that's where I wanted to be. I knew, that school was just so specific to so many of my interests. But I went up to Utah State as well as an ambassador. I was lucky enough to be a part of the ambassador program through the admissions office. And through that, I was able to learn about the other colleges. And so what was really funny was that I wanted to like get involved with every college. And that's kind of, because
little mid-college crisis.
Yeah, because everyone is, all these students, all these degrees and these professors are so interesting. So you're learning about the university and what they could teach you. I was like, I want to learn everything, but that's kind of where I was like, that crisis of like, you got to pick something eventually and get out of here. So I chose journalism with the PR emphasis and political science as what I declared, and I absolutely loved my time there. And my kind of career path, I just kind of stayed within marketing and writing, a lot of content creation, a lot of creativity. And I love that a lot. I love being able to use both sides of my brain. And just recently I started as the, EA to the CMO at Pluralsight. Before I was in fashion. And so going from fashion to tech has been quite the transition and quite the educational experience so far.
Yes.
But I've absolutely loved it. I love the tech world is very relevant, obviously, but also it's Pluralsight's doing some incredible stuff here in terms of using a service and a teaching tool as a way to educate people across the globe on how to be, web developers and coders and et cetera, software engineers. So I'm really grateful to be a part of a company that's doing something so great and teaching and being able to educate, which is what I also love about what I want to do eventually is also to teach too. So that's what I love that.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. So I am super interested. So you've had some really interesting job titles. We've talked about this before, Chris, but I'm curious, okay, executive assistant to CMO, like what does that actually like translate to?
Oh goodness. It's a lot of scheduling and a lot of calendars. I honestly was not, I was a little worried about what I was going to be doing, if it was just going to be organizing calendars, and which it is, but to the chief marketing officer, she's an amazing person and very busy. I didn't know you don't think about how a busy an executive position can be, but they really do need an executive assistant to kind of organize their schedule. But in doing so, and this is a unique position, just because when I was interviewing, I told you know, the CMO of Pluralsight, Lindsay, that I wanted to learn as well, being a continuous learner. And so she's given me the opportunity to be a part of all of the meetings that she's in, and she's really been it's been a mentorship as well, which is really you know, I'm really lucky because I'm being mentored by the chief marketing officer of a major tech company, right? And so it's really been a lot of education. And then she's also given me a lot of opportunities to also take on my own projects. For example, like creating my own marketing onboarding program for new hires, planning a lot of the on-sites and off-sites for her leadership team. So it's not just calendaring. I always kind of equivocate it to, like, for pop culture references, I always do like Devil Wears Prada, but I have to preface, I have to say that, and then I'm like, first of all, my boss, Lindsay, she is not Meryl Streep.
To be clear.
She's not mean. She is very, very great. And, you know, it's not like that relationship in the movie, but it is a lot of, you know, it's a lot of helping her be the best at her job, and which is really really fun, honestly, because I get to talk to so many different people and I get to organize things and think critically. Like, it's a lot more than people assume when you hear executive assistant, and I definitely know that now know that, like, how important that this job is. So yeah.
Absolutely. Chris, I'm super curious. I know there's a lot of stigma and a lot of stereotypes about Chaz students getting kind of this liberal arts education. I'm super curious, you know, when you were getting ready to graduate, I mean, what was going through your brain? Like, were you like, yes, I'm going to get a job? Or were you worried about that? I'm just curious, what was going on in your brain?
No. And you know, I kind of always wondered where that kind of idea came behind Chas, because you know, it has a lot of, it's all about people, the college, right? And that's what the world is made of, you know. And there's so many people and so many jobs. And so I think that, like, when I was getting ready to graduate, I wasn't necessarily worried, just because journalism, especially, you know, they taught us from the first class, you know, Intro to Mass Communication 1500, to your senior class, that you're going to be needed in one space or the other. Like, you know, if I wasn't going to, you know, work for a publication or a magazine, you know, or for anything, like, there was going to be needs for writers, whether it's, you know, every now and then, or, you know, a project, there's going to be a need for, you know, a team to work on an event in public relations and write the press releases and you know, and make content for people. So I wasn't necessarily ever worried, because I just was continually reassured by, you know, my professors and my counselors in Chas that, you know, there was going to be something for me. And it may not, and that's the thing about graduating too, is that, like, you have this kind of dream job in your head of what you want to do. And for some people, they're really lucky enough to kind of get their dream job right after they graduate, or, you know, when they get to that point. But, you know, it's not the case for everybody. I definitely can say my first job wasn't the immediate first option, but my dream job was like editor-in-chief of GQ. And I, you know, as a 20, you know, early 20-year-old, like, that's a lofty goal to have post-grad. So I knew that there was going to have to be work, but I knew that I was going to be able to get a job. So I wasn't really too worried about that.
No, I love that. And I think, you know, what really came through is this need for transferable skills and communication. I mean, by and large, I mean, it always comes up when we talk to employers. If their employees can't communicate, they don't want them there, right? And so exactly. Even though we talk about it all the time, it's because there's a lot of value in that. And so I really appreciate you bringing up some of those transferable skills. I am curious, so what are some skills when you think about maybe technical, but also some of those interpersonal, what are some of the skills that, like, kind of floats to the top in terms of, like, you need to use them all the time?
Ooh, you definitely need to know how to write, and not just write. I'm a long-winded person, as you now know, but you need to be able to write very, very quickly. And that was a skill I had to develop. And I'm really grateful that I had to develop in very much in my education, because especially just because the attention span of a human being, it gets shorter and shorter. They don't want to read a story unless it's a book they want to read, right? So you have to be able to to get your point across and your story across really, concise, consolidated, and, still be able to captivate someone and get them interested. That's one skill. I'm trying to think, there's like so many when I think about like, it's like, you have to be able to, again, be able to present, because I think a lot of people don't realize how many opportunities they have to present in front of others. And so being able to speak and have the confidence to do so is also a really big thing. I think that it's another a really big skill, man. There's like so many I'm trying to think of, but really for me, it is the skills that I always kind of feel like everybody should practice more of is being able to write and being able to present. Because I think that going out into the professional world, putting yourself out there is a lot more important than you might think. Just because even if you are, if you look at your, track sheet and your grades are perfect and, excellent, it's not just that, it's also how you're going to be able to present that, these reports, these things you find, these research you've done, all of that definitely contributes into it. So you can't just be like an amazing researcher or, an amazing engineer. You have to be able to, at some level, take all of that that you've done and explain that to somebody else who may or may not know, what you're going to be talking about.
Chris, you're a professional storyteller.
Yes. Well, I mean, I am definitely not a pro. I learned from pros and I'm trying to become a pro myself, but I definitely know that it's crazy important how well you present. And that happens in any career or job you have. It's always going to be a thing. People want to like hide behind their computers, and especially in this day and age, they can. But again, like I said, you have to be able to kind of captivate somebody, even if they're in the same field as you. You have to be able to captivate and keep their attention, and not have them looking up different windows during your Zoom call. Like, you have to be able to practice and work on that. And CHAS is in a really incredible school that has plenty of classes to do that, which I was really grateful that I had many opportunities to be able to work on that kind of skill.
Absolutely. Well, and you just probably don't know it, but you just gave me a reframe that emails, even emails, you're storytelling, right? Like, you're persuading, you're using all of these critical thinking skills in your writing, even for a simple work email. So I love that reframe of like storytelling and communication. Anyway, I'm taking notes here.
No, I love that. No, emails, I totally get it. I remember like one email at my boss, she was like, "You put too many exclamation points." And I was like,
"It's me."
She's like, that's what I'm saying. I was like, oh, and now I think about it, and like, yeah, like in, exclamation points even play a role in how you communicate. I didn't even think about this kind of stuff, because I just am like, "Hey, exclamation point, how are you?" Like, I get, I'm just really bubbly, but yeah, like, it is that cadence and how you do it in every way of communication. So it's all really important.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about some of the highs and the lows of this job. What are some of the things that you love about your work, and maybe some of the things that are less exciting?
A couple. I'll start with a couple lows. So there is a lot of people that want to talk to a CMO, and that can get a bit overwhelming. And so, it is, and time zones. That's the other thing too, is that we are in a wonderful world where, people from Australia can work for the same company that's based in Utah, right? But scheduling a phone call, I have the time zone difference, and it's not just us. I'm not talking international. We're talking also like East Pacific, Mountain Standard. I mean, that has been one of the, and I know it's not, I know there's like, websites and apps and whatnot, but It has been one of the hardest things, because I always forget, because I'm like, oh yeah, let's have this meeting at, 4:30 p.m. and that is 8 o'clock for Australia. Like, I mean, these lessons I had to learn. So I've done it a couple times where I've just been like, I'll throw it in the calendar, and then later on they'll be like, hey, that's 8 p.m. for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. So that's one of the lows. One of the other lows is that I feel like, and this is, I mean, like, I definitely have explained this to my boss, so I feel comfortable talking about it, but I going from a previous job where I was very, very, very much always doing something, um, uh, and having a very small team. So my body and my brain are kind of trained to, always be doing something. And if I'm not doing something, then something's going wrong. So it's really interesting to go from that to a company that has so much support and so much role clarity that that like your things are being taken care of, even though that's not your job. And so I'm always constantly kind of, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have like a 15-minute break. This is crazy. And I get kind of stressed out because I feel like I might be missing something. But that's only because of the fact that like I've done my job. And so it's up, it's up to other people. And so there has been a bit of it's not, I guess it's a weird low point, but I've had a struggle not constantly working, which is not supposed to be the case for a workplace, but that's how that's how I was kind of employee growing up. I don't know, raised in the career world to do. So it's kind of crazy for me, but some of the highs, again, like I said, I love people and I love being able to talk to so many individuals within this company. And getting to meet them. We had an on-site here at HQ in Salt Lake City, and I got to meet some amazing people that I've only talked through email and Slack in person. And it's so fun to be able to talk to them and get to know them on a personal level. But also just those interactions were like, hey, nice to meet you. I need to have a meeting with Lindsay. And I'm like, okay, great. And it's that, and like learning about what they're going to be talking about. And I have a lot of questions. Like I said, I'm learning tech just recently. So I get to be like, I Slack people. I'm just like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm really curious about your job. Like, I want to know more about this part of tech or this part of Pluralsight. And what I love about it so much is that everybody here has been like, absolutely, let's talk about it. Like, people want to brag about their job here because they're proud of it. And that makes me super excited because at Utah State, one big thing that all of Utah State taught me was being a continuous learner. And so going into spaces like this where I don't know something, I get really excited because I want to know. And then there's people, including my own, the chief marketing officer, who will set aside time to teach me. So I really, that's one of the biggest highs about this place and my job that I get to do.
I love that. And I love that you are able to talk to a good work environment. That's something that I think students often don't think too much about in that first job. It's like, I just need a job, which is okay. But if you get the wrong job with it, a company that's not going to support your growth, that can be pretty tough. And I would even say damaging at times. So I'm so glad to hear.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we can get into it if you want
a little tangent for a year.
Yeah. But no, a healthy work environment is crucial. And I can definitely say that I did not receive that right after graduation, but I definitely can say that in doing so, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what it means for myself, what I need in a workplace. And so, like I said, you're not going to get like the dream job right out the gate. I mean, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but I do think that it's like all hardships. There is lessons to learn there, but striving for what you think is best for you, even though you're fresh out of college, is still super important because it does set the standard for for yourself and for your like even though you're new, you're still an employee, you're still a person. And getting burnt out and getting stressed out and exhausted are all valid and consistent things that can happen to you. And so if you have a space that can validate those feelings or give you a break or be able to provide you with some support if you need it, is important things to look for when you're out there in the field, in the career world, because yeah, not having it can definitely take a toll, like damaging, like you said.
Well, I'll let you kind of answer this question depending on whichever industry you want to, I suppose. But I am curious, maybe from fashion or maybe from tech or maybe both. I don't know. What are some changes that you're kind of seeing going on right now? We're in a really weird time. 2021, was kind of like the unofficial continuation of 2020. And so it's like, I don't know what's going on in the tech world. Talk to us.
Yeah. So what I'm really seeing a lot of is the finding problems in our society, in our world, that can be solved by tech. And it's problems, maybe not problems is probably too big of a word, but maybe like little annoyances, I should say, that people are trying to solve for, which is really, really great. But also I'm seeing, so the CEO of Pluralsight, Aaron Skonnard, in his live keynote in 2020, he said, and this is my onboarding. He said this in the video when I was getting hired at Pluralsight. He said, eventually every company will be a tech company. And that really struck me, because coming from fashion, which I want to go back to eventually in my career, it hit me that I was like, he is absolutely right. Every company eventually has to be a tech company. And fashion, e-com, things like that, when I was there in that realm, it was a big deal, like, to figure out, because people want their stuff now. They want it to be unique. They want, so they kind of all blended together for me, that I was like, yeah, like, in order for you to succeed in any career you're going to enter into, there's an element of tech, online, the internet, the cloud, whatever you want to call it, that you either have to know or have a confidence or have a desire to get to know. Because I really do believe that eventually every job requirement will need to have some sort of e-commerce, internet, coding, web developing aspect to it. I just don't think that I don't believe that you can't, if we're being frank, I don't believe you'll be able to find a job if you don't have even a tiny bit of experience within that, in the realm of that, because it's going to be needed. And especially if for example, like, if your company is based in a different state or country than you, that's even more poignant to the fact that you are going to be on the computer so much more. And a lot of people complain about, that takes away the aspect of in-person stuff, but I think it strengthens it. I think that when you have an opportunity to be in person, face to face with somebody, I think that, I think we took it for granted. And then, with the unfortunate pandemic we had, I think that it reminded us that in-person situations we get are so fun and so special. And so I think that you will still be able to have those, whether you're shopping for clothes or something like that, but you also have to be able to respect and understand and know how to engage with somebody on the internet. It's just super important that whatever you're going to be entering into, you are going to be able to say that you have some sort of idea or understanding about the current state of the tech world and how that connects to the job that you want, and be able to explain that in detail. Doesn't mean you have to like enroll in a bunch of software engineering classes tomorrow, although the engineering school is super cool, I will say. But I will say that that's the beauty about Utah State and the extension classes, post-grad, grad school, even just enrolling in something like, shameless plug, but Pluralsight, like, to be able to continuously learn post-grad is something that I've realized is super capable, and setting aside time in your life to learning more, even when you graduate from such an amazing school like Utah State, is super, it's possible for anybody. So definitely tech is blending into every job, and we'll have to like kind of accept that and figure out what's next.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think 2020 kind of encourage that. But like you said, it was like those places were like, it was already in place. Like we were already moving towards tech integration. And I feel like 2020 sped up that process maybe.
Yes.
But I agree. And I love what your boss shared, that every company is going to have to become a tech company if they want to survive.
Yeah.
I think that's such an interesting insight. So super, super interesting. All right. Well, Chris, it's hard to believe we're almost out of time, but I do want to give you space for like the last like second or two here, just to share, if you were thinking back to like 18-year-old Chris, what career advice would you have?
Oh man, 18-year-old Chris, I would have a lot of advice for 18-year-old Chris. It'd be like a yelling session. Let's see here. Definitely, like going into college, I think I was really, really focused on the fun aspect of it, and I still encourage that. But I definitely think that, set some time aside by yourself to really think about your future, but understand that future is so subject to change. But I think setting some time aside to actually physically write the goals, and to have that as your starting off point, is really, really crucial. I loved my time at Utah State so much, but I also know that I was always a bit lost because I never really sat to myself and said, what do I want? I think people just say, you go to high school, you go to college. That's kind of the pathway. And so you're kind of going through emotion, but really college, at least for me, was a starting off point for my growth and my, in my personal life and professional life. And so the advice I would give would be, sit down, realize how big of a step this is that you're going to college, wherever you're going to be. And if you're going to Utah State, that's really great. But, take that moment, before you go to like the homecoming week or the football game or whatever, and just say, okay, I am here. What can I do with this experience? And write down those goals and have it, and don't stick to it, but just use it as a starting off point and use it as a base for you. And be able to rehearse those goals and be able to say them with confidence, so that if someone were to ask you, that person that you meet at the homecoming game or the fraternity or whatever, they might be able to point you in a direction if they know what you want, but you have to know that for yourself first. So that's the advice I would give if I was talking to 18-year-old me, which I'm like rolling my eyes about because I'm just like, 18-year-old me, what were we doing, Chris? But like we just rolled with it. But yeah, that's the advice I would give.
No, that's awesome. And you hit on so many good nuggets that I wish we had time to dive into, but I really appreciate, throughout this entire conversation, something that's really stood out to me is your engagement with your own life. Like you are engaged, like you are present in your life, but you're also so curious, like you're continually learning, continually asking questions. And I think those are some really good takeaways for anyone listening to keep in mind. In the career world, we often call it the designer mindset of curiosity. To stay curious, designers always are curious and asking questions. And so I really love that you've hit on that. And Chris, I just want to say a huge thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us, to share a little bit of Aggie spirit.
Of course. I like Chas was the College of Humanities Social Studies. I just like that college. That ignited my curiosity, and the professors there. I mean, like, I wish I could personally thank each one of them, even if they weren't mine, because I am incredibly grateful for so many people at that school. But that college accepted my weirdness and they flourished it, and they made it into the person I am today. So thank you for letting me share my love for Utah State and my love for that college and my love for the I don't even know, the eternal beautiful flame that is Utah State. I just love it so much. So thank you, Ola. I appreciate it. Go Aggies, and anyone can reach out to me if they want to talk more about it. I'll let them finish this episode and then they can reach out to me or whatever and talk to me about it later.
Fabulous. Well, Chris, I don't know if you're going to be getting more phone calls from students or the marketing department in Chaz, but it has been so good to chat with you.
We hope you loved this episode of the USU Career Studio podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with your friends and family.